Venus Williams is a professional American tennis player who is a former world number 1. Williams has won several single Grand Slam titles, 5 at Wimbledon and 2 at the US Open. To hit a successful tennis serve, there are many different biomechanical factors that are used. Serving a tennis serve has 3 phases: preparation, acceleration, and follow-through. Each of these phases has their own biomechanical factors that lead up to a successful serve. Throughout this task, we will do a biomechanical analysis where we will analyse these 3 phases to find its effect on the projectile and its motion. The preparation phase starts when there is sight of the first initial movement and ends at the maximal external rotation of the shoulder. The first phase prepares the athletes to serve the ball. Their body initially starts off with a larger base of support, which allows the athlete to have more stability. Her centre of gravity is straight down, which also creates her to be stabilised or in an equilibrium state. Williams holds her racket low as this increases the distance from the axis to the resistance, so the axis arm is longer than the force arm. Longer levers allow us to have a mechanical advantage, which allows us to apply less effort to move a greater resistance. Williams starts off with a larger base of support, which allows her to have a greater transfer of momentum throughout her body. As Williams tosses the ball up in the air, the weight that was initially on her front foot is now majority on the back foot. This allows for the athlete to gain momentum and prepare for the kinetic chain. The kinetic chain refers to the body's intricate coordination of various segments to perform a specific activity that involves the precise positioning, timing, and speed. As Williams reaches the maximal external rotation of her shoulder, it is 90 degrees. The second phase, acceleration, begins at the maximal external rotation of the shoulder until there is contact with the ball. During this phase, the athlete will experience kinetic chain as the momentum from her back foot will pass through her body into the racket. Williams will bring her back foot closer to her front foot, which will create a smaller base of support, and her back foot is barely touching the ground, which creates a decrease in stability. As she is not flat-footed, she is able to have a fast reaction. However, her knees are bent, which is causing her to be closer to the ground, which increases her stability. Williams' line of gravity is through her base of support, which is a factor of increasing stability. This is because gravity acts on a body through the centre of gravity. Williams uses the foot-up technique, which allows her to have a greater height when hitting the ball. However, between the foot-up technique and the foot-back technique, there is no difference with ball velocities. Bending her knees will prepare Williams to jump up and forward, which will help her to transfer momentum through her hips, shoulders, through her racket, then onto the ball, which will create higher velocity, making the ball go at a faster pace. Williams' maximal external rotation of her shoulder will gain acceleration when it moves forwards to hit the ball. Williams uses the third-class lever when her shoulder is at the maximal external rotation. Williams' shoulder is the axis while the tennis racket is applying force onto the ball and the ball is acting as the resistance or load. The third-class lever requires greater force to move a given resistance. However, greater range and motion is gained, allowing Williams to serve powerful shots. Williams uses the third-class lever right at the end of this phase. At the start of the phase, her wrist is at a 90-degree angle, and when she rotates her shoulder to hit the ball, her whole arm, including her wrist, is in a straight line. The last and final phase of a tennis serve is the follow-through. This phase begins as soon as there is contact with the ball and continues all through the end of the serve's motion. As soon as the racket is in contact with the ball, Newton's second law comes into play. A force applied to an object will produce a change in motion in the direction of the applied force that is directly proportional to the size of the force. In tennis, when hitting the ball, the racket applies force onto the ball, making the ball fly into its flight path. To have an effective serve, Williams' follow-through requires her shoulder to become internally rotated, meaning she is bringing her shoulder towards her front torso. Internally rotation increases the serve's velocity by 40%. This benefits Williams as she will have more control of where she hits the ball. As Williams falls forwards, this transfers her body mass through to the ball, making it have a high velocity. While the ball is in flight, there are many factors that affect the flight path. Gravity affects the ball's vertical flight path by pulling the ball down to the ground by 9.8 meters per second. Without gravity, the ball will fly in a straight line until a force is acted upon it. Air resistance affects the tennis ball's projectile horizontally. It decreases the distance that the tennis ball travels. This leads into the Magnus effect. Tennis players are more likely to create the ball to spin on the side when serving to make the ball curve during its trajectory. If the ball is accelerated to go anti-clockwise, then air resistance will come onto the ball clockwise. As tennis players hit the ball with a spin, the ball will circulate in an anti-clockwise direction. This means as the ball is travelling to the left, air will pass on top and underneath the ball. This diagram shows that the ball is going in the same direction as the airflow, causing it to be smooth. This makes it cancel out and nothing ends up happening, which ultimately causes the ball to have an upwards force, making it travel downwards. However, if the ball is circulating against the airflow, the ball will face conflict with the direction the airflow is coming in. When comparing my tennis serve to the elite player Venus Williams, I noticed that there were some differences as well as similarities between us. During the serve, we both break down the serve into the 3 main parts: preparation, acceleration, and follow-through. Before the initial movement can can be seen, I start off with a large base of support. This ensures that I am stable. My center of gravity travels through my base of support, which is another factor in creating a state of equilibrium. To have a maximum distance from the axis to the resistance, I hold my racket as low as I can. This creates the axis arm to be longer than the force arm. Compared to Williams, Venus holds her racket low as well. Like Williams, I also start off with a large base of support, which allows me to have a greater transfer of momentum throughout my body. As I toss the ball up, the weight that was initially on my front foot is the majority on my back foot. This can be compared to Venus Williams. Transferring my weight from the back foot allows me to gain momentum and prepare for the kinetic chain. As I bring my shoulder to its maximal external rotation, it does not reach 90 degrees compared to Williams, which means I will not have as much power as Williams does, as well as movement. During the acceleration phase, I experience the kinetic chain as the momentum from my back foot passes through my body into my racket. Just like Williams, I bring my back foot closer to my front foot. This creates a smaller base of support as there is now limited area that my center of gravity can pass through. However, as my knees are bent, this also helps me to gain stability as my center of gravity is closer to the ground. My line of gravity passed through my base of support, which is also another factor for increasing my stability. Before I hit the ball, I bend my knees, which will allow me to jump up and forward, which will help me to transfer the momentum through my hips, shoulders, through into my racket, then onto the ball. This will also create higher velocity, making the ball go further at a faster pace. When hitting the ball, I use a third class lever. This can also be compared to Williams' serve, as she also uses this class lever, as this is the most common type of lever in sport. My shoulder is classified as the axis, while the racket is the force, as it is applying force to hit the ball, and the tennis ball is the resistance. The follow-through stage begins as soon as there is contact with the ball. Compared to Venus Williams, my serve is not as flat and fast as her serve is, as there are many differences in the way we both serve. Williams is 185 centimeters tall, while I am 173 centimeters tall. This gives Williams an advantage with having a greater successive serve, as she is able to reach a greater height than me, and having a greater height, Williams is able to hit the ball harder without worrying about it going into the net. However, as I have a shorter height than Williams by 12 centimeters, I do not have a height advantage, therefore I need to use my legs to jump to give me height, but my jump is estimated 2 centimeters off the ground, while Williams is estimated to be 6 centimeters off the ground. Williams also has longer levers, which contributes to the height advantage she has compared to me. During my tennis serve, the flight path of the ball is curved and Williams is flat. This is caused from the amount of power and height of release of the ball it is hit at. Williams also falls forward, which contributes power when hitting the ball, allowing it to travel in a flat flight path. As I do not have a greater jump forward, I lack power and body momentum, which causes the ball to have a curved flat path. Ultimately, my serve compared to Williams is a lot different due to our height differences, levers, and serving experiences. As Williams has been in many different tournaments such as Wimbledon, Grand Slam, and US Open, she has had a lot more experience and training with making her serve as close to perfect as possible.